The smell of coffee had always meant safety to me. 41 years of mornings in the same kitchen, the same blue percolator, the same view of the oak tree my husband planted the year our daughter was born. When he passed, I kept making 2 cups out of habit for almost a month before I caught myself. Old habits are stubborn things. They outlast almost everything else. My daughter called on a Tuesday in late November, 3 weeks after the first real cold snap had come through. I remember because I'd just pulled the storm windows down and my hands were stiff from the work. "Mom, we want you to come stay with us," she said. "Just for the winter. The roads get bad and I worry." I told her I'd think about it. I'd been alone in that house for 2 years by then, since her father passed, and I'd gotten used to the quiet in a way I hadn't expected. Not a lonely quiet, a settled one. But the winter she was describing had already started to feel long. My son-in-law had been the one to bring it up first, I later learned. He'd suggested it to her as his idea, his kindness. At the time, I thought it was generous. I moved in the first week of December with 2 suitcases, my good cast-iron skillet, and the box I kept on the shelf of my bedroom closet. The box wasn't anything that looked important from the outside, just a faded shoebox I'd covered in brown paper years ago and tied with kitchen twine. Inside was the envelope with the retirement account paperwork, the original deed to the house, my husband's death certificate, the small velvet pouch with my mother's pearl earrings and her thin gold wedding band, and the passbook for the savings account I'd kept separate all our marriage. A little money set aside for myself, from teaching for 31 years. Nothing extravagant. Enough. I put the box on the top shelf of the guest closet when I arrived. My daughter helped me unpack my clothes and hung a little lavender sachet on the closet rod. She seemed genuinely happy to have me there. Her husband smiled at me across the dinner table that first night. He cut the bread and passed it without being asked. I told myself I was lucky. The first month was pleasant enough. My daughter and I cooked together on Sundays. I helped with the grocery lists. I read in the evenings while they watched television. There was a rhythm to it, not unlike the rhythm of living with anyone new, where you learn each other's small habits and make room. But I noticed things. Small things at first. The way my son-in-law asked casual questions that weren't quite casual. How much did I pay for the house originally? Had I ever thought about downsizing? Was the retirement account through the state system or a private plan? He asked these things lightly in the middle of other conversations, the way you might slip a question into a sentence so no one notices the weight of it. I answered simply and changed the subject each time. Then in January, I got a letter. It came addressed to me at their house. I'd had my mail forwarded after some discussion about whether it was easier, and it was from the financial institution that held my retirement account. I almost didn't open it that evening. I was tired and I set it on the nightstand, meaning to read it in the morning, but something made me reach for it before I turned the lamp off. It was a confirmation, a beneficiary change confirmation, processed 6 days earlier. The primary beneficiary on my retirement account had been changed from my daughter to my son-in-law. I read it twice, then a third time. I kept thinking I was misreading it, that my eyes were doing that thing they do sometimes in dim light. But the name was clear. His name, his date of birth. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. I set it in the box with the other papers. I did not sleep well that night. In the morning, I came down to the kitchen while my daughter was getting ready for work, and my son-in-law was still upstairs. I made my coffee. I stood at the window and looked at their backyard, the way the frost was still on the grass at 8 in the morning in February, and I thought about the person I had been at 30. How certain I was then about people, how much I had since learned. When my daughter came down, I hugged her the same as always. I told her to drive carefully. I watched her car pull out of the driveway. Then I went back upstairs, got dressed in my good wool coat, took the box from the closet shelf, and told my son-in-law I had a doctor's appointment. "Do you need a ride?" he asked. He was still in the kitchen with his coffee. Helpful. Always so helpful lately. "I'll take a cab," I said. "Don't trouble yourself." I don't know if he suspected anything. He smiled and said to bundle up. I went first to the financial institution on Maple Street, where I'd held that retirement account for 22 years. I sat down with an advisor whose name I've since forgotten, but whose patience I'll always remember. I showed her my identification, my original account paperwork, and a letter. She confirmed it. The change had been processed through an online portal, authorized with my login credentials. I told her quietly that I had not made that change. She got very still in the way that professionals do when they understand the seriousness of a moment. She asked if I wanted to reverse it immediately. I said yes. I also asked to change my login credentials and add a verbal security password to the account that would be required for any future changes. She did all of it while I sat there. It took about 40 minutes. When I walked out, the air was cold and sharp, and I stood on the sidewalk for a moment just breathing it. Then I went to the bank 2 blocks down where I'd held my personal savings account since before my daughter was born. The teller recognized me. She'd helped me roll over a CD just the previous spring. I asked to speak with the branch manager, and she didn't ask why, just said of course, and led me to a small office with a ficus tree in the corner that needed watering. The manager, a younger man with a kind face, listened while I explained, briefly, that I was concerned about account security. He pulled up my account. There had been no changes, but there was something else. 2 inquiries into my account balance over the past 3 weeks, both from the same IP address, connected to a home Wi-Fi network. I understood immediately. I transferred the majority of the balance to a new account he opened for me that morning. New account number, new debit card. The old account left open with a small balance so nothing would look obviously wrong. I signed the paperwork and thanked him. I sat in the lobby for a few minutes afterward and made a list in my small notebook of everything I still needed to do. I had a name already for the attorney. My neighbor Ruth had used her the year before for an estate matter and had recommended her highly. I called from the lobby and the receptionist said she had a cancellation that Friday. I said I'd take it. I went to the library after that. I'd always loved libraries. My mother used to say that no problem was ever worsened by going to the library first. I sat at a table near the window and read for an hour. And for that hour, I let myself simply be an old woman reading on a cold afternoon, which is a fine thing to be. When I got back to the house, my son-in-law was working from home. He asked about my appointment. I said the doctor had been pleased with my blood pressure. He nodded and went back to his laptop. At dinner that evening, my daughter talked about a project at work, a colleague she'd had trouble with, whether to say something or let it pass. I listened and offered what I thought. My son-in-law cleared the table without being asked. I did not treat him differently. Not yet. I need you to understand something about what it feels like to sit across the dinner table from someone who has betrayed your trust and smile and pass the salt. It is not easy. But it is something women of a certain age have often had to learn, to keep your face calm while your mind works. To be patient. My mother was patient, her mother before her. There is a kind of clarity that comes from that patience, a steadiness that nothing can rattle once you've found it. I had found it sometime around 2 o'clock that afternoon in a bank lobby chair. On Friday, I met with the attorney. Her name was Carol, and she was perhaps 50, no nonsense in the best possible way, the kind of woman who gets to the point without being unkind. I laid everything out for her, the beneficiary change, the account inquiries, the timeline, the questions my son-in-law had been asking for weeks. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You've done the most important things already. Let's make sure everything else is in order." We spent 2 hours going through my estate plan. The will was outdated. It had been drafted before my husband passed and needed revising in several places regardless. We revised it. We made sure all accounts with beneficiary designations were properly documented. She advised me about the house deed and what options I had. She said I should also retrieve any important original documents I was keeping at their home and store them, either with her office or in a safe deposit box. I told her about the box on the closet shelf. She looked at me with a kind of professional calm that I recognized as controlled alarm. "Get it out of there as soon as you can," she said. "Today, if possible." I went back to the house before my son-in-law came back from wherever he'd gone that afternoon. I took the box from the closet. I drove to the bank and rented a safe deposit box, something I should have done years ago, perhaps, but I'd always felt that keeping things at home was practical. Another thing I've learned, I put everything inside. The deed, the death certificate, my mother's pearls, the velvet pouch, the passbook, the letter. The key to the safe deposit box I put on my own keyring next to my house key and my car key. Then I went to see Ruth. Ruth has been my neighbor and my friend for 27 years. She met me at the door with the look of someone who could see from my face that something had happened, and she made tea without asking and sat across from me in her kitchen. I told her all of it. She was quiet for a long time when I finished. Then she said, "What are you going to do about your daughter?" That was the question I'd been holding all week, because here is the thing about betrayal that doesn't fit neatly into any advice anyone ever gives you. My son-in-law had done this thing, but my daughter lived in that house. My daughter had smiled at me over that dinner table. I did not know how much she knew. I did not know how much she didn't know, and until I understood that, I needed to be careful. I told Ruth I wasn't ready to have that conversation yet. I needed more ground under my feet first. She nodded. She poured more tea. I stayed until the light changed outside and I could feel the late afternoon settling into evening. That specific quiet I remembered from my own kitchen, from all those years of endings of days, and I thought about my husband, about what he would have said. He would have said, "Handle what you can handle today and leave the rest for tomorrow." I had handled quite a lot that week. I drove back to my daughter's house and made dinner because it was my turn and I had said I would, and because keeping your word is one of the few things entirely within your own control, and I am stubborn about the things I can control. I made pot roast. My son-in-law had 2 helpings. Over the following weeks, I said nothing directly. I watched. I found in that watching that my son-in-law was careful in his carelessness. He believed he'd covered his tracks sufficiently, and that belief made him sloppy in other ways. He began bringing up the house more often. Did I have a sense of what it was worth now with the market the way it was? Had I thought about whether it made sense to hold on to it, or whether selling might give me more flexibility? Flexibility. The word he kept using. I told him I wasn't in any hurry to make decisions. My daughter was quieter than usual in those weeks. I watched her too. I noticed the way she sometimes looked at her husband and then looked away. The way she paused before answering questions that should have had easy answers. I don't know what she knew, even now. What I know is that she loved me and that she was afraid of something, and that those 2 things were in conflict in her. In March, Carol called to tell me the revised will had been finalized and was ready for me to sign. I signed it on a Thursday morning. That evening, I asked my daughter if she could sit with me for a while after dinner. My son-in-law said he had calls to make and went upstairs, which was convenient. We sat in the living room. I told her I'd been doing some estate planning, updating things since her father passed, that it was overdue, and I felt better having done it. She said that sounded sensible. Then I told her, quietly, that I knew about the beneficiary change. She went very still. I told her I wasn't angry with her. I told her I didn't know what she knew and what she didn't, and that I wasn't asking her to explain anything tonight. But I wanted her to understand that I had taken care of things, that my accounts were in order, that my documents were safe, and that I was going to be fine, whatever happened, because I had made sure of it myself. She cried. I let her cry. I held her hand. She said she was sorry, kept saying it, and I told her we would talk more when she was ready, and that I loved her, and that nothing that had happened changed that. What she told me over several conversations in the weeks after was that she hadn't known about the retirement account specifically. She had known her husband had been asking me questions, poking around, and she had told herself it was just his way, that he was practical, that he was thinking about the future. She had told herself that for months. It is easy to tell yourself things about people you live with. She believed him less after that night. I could see it in small ways, the recalibration of trust, that slow and painful process. I didn't push. Marriages are complicated places that outsiders can see clearly from a distance, but can't enter without causing damage. What happened between them in the months that followed was theirs to navigate. What I could navigate was my own life. In April, I found a small apartment, about 12 minutes from their house, on the second floor of a building with a buzzer system and a parking spot and a sunny kitchen window that faced east. I put a blue pot on the windowsill and planted basil. I moved out on a Saturday in late April. My daughter helped me carry boxes. My son-in-law did not come. She and I ordered pizza and sat on the floor of my new living room because the furniture hadn't all been arranged yet, and we talked for a long time about her father and about her childhood and about a trip we'd taken once, just the two of us, to see the coast of Maine when she was 12. It was a good evening. The following Monday, I went back to the library, my old habit, and sat at the table by the window for an hour with a novel I'd been meaning to read since the fall. Afterward, I walked to the coffee shop on the corner and had a cup of something dark and good, and sat at the window table watching people move past on the sidewalk. There is a particular kind of freedom that comes not from having everything you want, but from knowing that what you have is truly yours, that no one can reach it without your knowledge, that you have put the things worth protecting in places only you can access. It doesn't feel triumphant exactly. It feels quieter than that. It feels like breathing correctly after a long time of not quite getting enough air. I think about my mother sometimes, about the patience she had, the steadiness. She raised 3 children on a teacher's salary after my father left, and she never once made us feel poor or afraid. She knew how to hold things calmly. She knew that the loudest response was rarely the right one. I think she would have approved of how I handled this. I still have coffee with my daughter every week, usually on Wednesdays. We talk about ordinary things, her work, the garden she started, a book she read. We are finding our way back to each other in a different shape than before, which is sometimes how it has to go. I don't know what will happen with her marriage. I hope she finds her way to clarity, whatever form that takes. What I know is what I've always known, which is that the ground under your own feet is the only ground you can be sure of, and the best thing you can do for the people you love is to tend to that ground so carefully that nothing can wash it out from under you. My basil is growing in the window. The coffee is good. I am fine. There is something I've come to understand about the way life works, and it has nothing to do with luck or fate or anything written in the stars. It has to do with choices, the small ones made quietly, over time, that accumulate into something either solid or hollow. What happened to me didn't come from nowhere. It came from a series of decisions made by a person who believed that patience and age were the same as weakness. They are not. My son-in-law made choices. He chose to see an older woman living alone as an opportunity rather than a person. He chose to ask careful questions designed to map out what I owned. He chose to sit across from me at dinner and smile, and then reach into my life the moment my back was turned. Those choices revealed something about his character that no amount of charm could conceal forever. Character, I've found, always surfaces. It is patient that way. And I made choices too. I chose to pay attention when something felt wrong, even when I couldn't yet name what it was. I chose to act quietly rather than react loudly. I chose to walk into that bank, and that attorney's office, and that branch manager's room, and handle one thing at a time until everything that was mine was protected. Those choices came from something I'd been building my whole life without quite realizing it. A kind of inner steadiness that my years of teaching and raising a family and surviving loss had given me. You don't know you have that steadiness until the moment you need it. Then you find out. I think about the women who raised me. My mother never had much, but she held what she had with both hands. She was not a suspicious person, but she was a clear-eyed one. She taught me that taking care of yourself is not selfishness. It is the foundation that makes it possible to take care of anyone else. I didn't fully understand that when I was young. I understand it now completely. What I want anyone listening to take from my story is this. Intelligence is not about being the loudest person in the room or the one with the sharpest words. It is about seeing clearly and moving deliberately. It is about knowing the difference between a question asked out of genuine care and one asked to extract information. It is about trusting the small voice that says something is not right, even when everything looks fine on the surface. Integrity, the kind that holds when no one is watching, is the only thing that truly belongs to you. It cannot be transferred without your consent. It cannot be changed through an online portal. It is not kept in any account that someone else can access. My son-in-law could change a beneficiary designation. He could not change who I was. And resilience, that is simply what happens when you refuse to let what has been done to you become the end of your story. I moved into a small apartment with a sunny kitchen window. I planted basil. I have coffee with my daughter on Wednesdays. I'm still here, still whole, still mine. That is not a small thing. That is everything.